Ahoy there, friends. I'm here today to finish The Nature of Predators, which I talked about last year. At least I'm trying to finish it, but something keeps distracting me. Hey, next time you go to the store, why don't you pick up some of those vegan sausages? I love those things. They're so much better than that meat you like to eat. Are you ever gonna get a job? I can't get a job. I'm an illegal alien, remember? You know what? Here, let me show you something real quick. Hey, have you ever heard the word Remington?
This is the introduction song. It's not very good, but it's not too long.
So, The Nature of Predators is a story on Royal Road. Like the book that I reviewed last year, which you can see here, this is just the first act of the story. It's the first, 40 or 50 chapters, and the total thing is around 180 chapters. And as you can see right here, even just the first act is still fairly thick, and that's one of the issues we'll be running into. I thought that the original book, or first book, however you want to put that, I thought that was alright, but after finishing, I have a lower opinion of it than I did before, to be honest with you. Because Nature of Predators committed a cardinal sin. It did the one thing that no book can ever really bounce back from, and that's that it made me not care. By the end of this, I really did not care about what was going on. I didn't care about these people, I didn't care about the world, I didn't care about what they were doing, and that's a shame. Because, as I said before, there's parts in the first book that I did enjoy. I thought that it had some really cool, neat ideas in there, but they were also explored on very much a surface level. You know, they never really dove below the surface. Like the idea that most sapient life in the universe would evolve as herbivores and they would be shocked and terrified by humans and other aliens that would be predators and that we eat meat is appalling to them, and just observing how they would be not just psychologically different, but how their societies and cultures would be different. That's all really cool, but it was only ever explored in a very, very shallow manner. And ultimately, I think the biggest problem facing this is that it was published on the internet. It was published on Royal Road, and usually with stories like that, they're published 1 week at a time, and sometimes they come out monthly, sometimes they come out weekly or twice a week. I believe Nature of Predators was either weekly or twice a week, but it doesn't really matter. The point is, you're writing it as you go and you don't have a chance to go back and edit it. Whereas with like an actual book that, whether it's traditionally published or self-published, you write the whole thing at once and then you go back and you edit it, and then by the time it comes out to the audience, it's a completed product, whereas with online stories, that's just not the case. And you see this with other books like this that, start off as internet stories and then are published and packaged as actual books. Like the one chapter at a time format leads to bloat, it leads to dropped plot threads, it leads to ideas not really having time to cook and be explored properly, which is a shame because Nature of Predators is a science fiction book which is dedicated, or maybe not dedicated to, but it is built on the idea of exploring these neat concepts. Like a lot of old school science fiction, the most recent example I can think of would be A Canticle for Leibowitz. That's a pretty good book. A lot of that is not really good in terms of like plot or character or anything, but it's still interesting and has survived for decades because it explores these really big, neat ideas. And Nature of Predators could have done that, but the one chapter at a time format just, it really killed it in the womb. Now, I think if you took the completed version of Nature of Predators, like all 180 some odd chapters, and then you edited that down, I think you could make a pretty good book out of it, but it would take some effort. And if you want an example of a book that was also originally published online in a similar format, and was also just sort of packaged into a couple of books and then sent out to the world without proper editing, that's 50 Shades of Grey. Like, if you ever read those or watch the movies, you know that there's a lot of weird dropped plot threads, there's a lot of moments that just sort of come out of nowhere, they aren't built up to and they don't lead to anything, it just needs to be exciting for a chapter and then it goes away. If they had edited the original 50 Shades of Grey story, I think it was called Masters of the Universe originally, I think if they had edited that and actually put in effort, they could have made some halfway decent books out of it, but why bother? It's much easier to just change the characters' names and fix a few spelling mistakes. Nature of Predators has a similar problem, is what I'm saying. Another problem is that by the end of Act 1, there's several different storylines going on, and they are all told from different first-person POV characters. So pretty much every chapter just switches to a new character who's doing something different, which is tangentially related to what other characters are doing, but largely it's their own thing. And these chapters are also really short for the most part, so not a lot of time happens in them. You know, not a lot of events transpire in each individual chapter. So we have a chapter where a little bit happens, and then we move to somewhere else where a little bit happens in that other storyline, and something else happens in a different storyline. And so the end result is that we have all of these different storylines that are moving glacially slow. A couple of months ago, I read Wind and Truth, and I was very disappointed by it, and it had this exact same problem. However, Wind and Truth never truly had plot kudzu take over. And I've spoken about plot kudzu before. Basically, that's what I call it when the plot just sort of spreads out and there's so many different storylines and characters that they're all just sort of doing things, and you just get this vague sense of things happening, but there's no real sense of forward progression, and it doesn't feel like the story is moving towards any sort of climax or ending. This was probably the biggest problem with A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons, and it's the reason that we're never getting The Winds of Winter. And even if The Winds of Winter does, by some miracle, come out, we're never getting A Dream of Spring, because George R.R. Martin let plot kudzu take over his story, and now he doesn't know how to end things. Wind and Truth never had plot kudzu completely take over. There was always some sense of forward momentum, but it was just really, really slow. Nature of Predators, by around the 100 chapter mark, so partway through Act 2, plot kudzu has very much taken over. There's a lot of different storylines. Like there's a war going on, and there's an election happening, and there's political machinations, and people are betraying each other, and we're learning secrets about the true nature of the universe, and there's also personal relationships between the characters that are evolving, and like individually most of this is fine, but it all just moves so slow, and it's all distracting from each other rather than tying together, so we just get this vague sense of things happening. There is simultaneously way too much happening and way too little happening. And I mean, I know that sounds impressive, but this is a thing that happens, number one, with a lot of new writers who think, oh yeah, I'm going to write this grand epic story, but they don't know how to actually make it into a story, so it's just a series of events. And also, again, the fact that this was written one chapter at a time, there's no way to really go back and edit things. There's no way to really structure it ahead of time. Like, it doesn't work, man. As I said earlier, this is told from a variety of first-person POVs, and they all narrate exactly the same. You know, and all the dialogue as well. Like, no matter what character is talking, they all kind of talk alike. Just throwing that out there. That's an issue that, you know, like, an editor might pick up on, or if you wrote this as just a regular book and then went back and edited it, you know, you'd be able to fix this problem, just saying. The point is, and the much bigger problem, is that all of the narrators just narrate exactly the same, so I kept having to scroll back up to the top of the chapter and see who it was that was even talking, like who it was that I was even following right now. And look, I've said it 100 times, I'll probably say it 1,000 more, but if you're going to have a story that follows a bunch of characters like that, either just write it in third person. There's nothing wrong with third person, guys. I do not know why so many young writers really only want to write in first person. I don't know what people are allergic to third person with, but whatever. Just either write it in third person or have it be told from first person point of views, but you really got to put in the work to make them all sound different. The best example of this is The Young World by Chris Weitz, and those books are not great. They're not amazing. I've spoken about them before. They have issues, but they are the best books I've ever read when it comes to differentiating between different narrators. Because by the end of the series, I think there are about 6 or 7 different people whose perspectives we are viewing these events through. And I remember all of them very, very well, because they all speak very differently. They all have a very different way of looking at the world. And I feel like the fact that The Nature of Predators has aliens as point of view characters, I feel like you could go places with that and go even weirder and even more interesting and unique with it. You know, like you could have it be told from the perspective of human characters, and they mostly describe how things look. You know, they describe things via sight. But then you could have a different race of aliens that has a much stronger sense of smell than humans, and so they mostly describe how things smell, and they describe the sense of things. Like that could be really interesting, and it could help distinguish these different characters so they don't all sound exactly alike. Because if you're not able to do that, then it all just blends together into one big pile of mush. And you never want that, especially with a story that is this long, because Nature of Predators is fairly long. It took me a while to get through.
Well, that sucks!
And I think I mentioned this in my initial review, but by the end of Act 1, the story wants to kind of be military science fiction, but it does it in a very half-assed manner, and so it kind of fails at that too. Like, there's this big war going on, but it's hard to really care or feel the stakes because, well, they're focusing on all these battles, and you don't really understand how the battles work. In Nature of Predators, the battles do have some tactics. I'll give them that. The battles do have some tactics. They're really rudimentary, though. And the strategy feels like an afterthought. And for those unaware, like, tactics are basically how you win a battle. Strategy is how you win a broader conflict like a war. Just throwing that out there. And also, we don't really have any idea of how their weapons or their other equipment really works. Like, if you want us to understand what's going on and empathize with what's going on and understand, like, oh, the heroes are in a bad spot or the heroes are winning right now, like, we have to understand what the capabilities of every side is. You know, that's things like numbers, how does geography benefit one side or the other, what can their weapons do, like how far can they fire, how much damage can they do, things like that. And I don't mean you necessarily need to run down a list and just list it off like a textbook or anything like that, but you need to give the audience an idea of what's going on. Otherwise, the battles just turn into flashing lights and noise, except this is a book, so it's all written, so we don't even have the flashing lights and noise. Like, we need to have all that for military science fiction to work well, and Nature of Predators doesn't have that. So a lot of the battles wind up feeling like not particularly good battles from old episodes of Star Trek, you know, where they just shake the camera around a little bit, and some characters go, "Ah, Captain, our shields are at 20%, and he just goes full speed ahead, or something like that.
To war. Unable to lock target.
You know, and I'm not saying that's bad necessarily, but compare that to something like The Expanse, where in the space battles, characters are already depressurized the cabin, and they are in their suits and everything, and you can see bullets flying past them as the battle's going on. Even if one isn't necessarily bad, the other one is very, very clearly better, because we understand the stakes and we understand what's going on, and we understand that a single wrong move, or even just a moment of bad luck, will result in the heroes meeting a grisly fate. And I haven't spoken a lot about the specifics of the story in Nature of Predators, but that's really just because, again, plot kudzu has taken over. There's just, like, events happening. There's a war, some stuff happens in the war, and then that ends. There's an election, there's political machinations, like I said. Like, just things just sort of happen, and it doesn't really feel like they are progressing in any way, and then they come to a head and it's over. But I do just want to take a moment to say the last chapter is embarrassing. Like, I'm not going to spoil it, really, but it's basically just a character going, "Wait, genocide is bad? Whoa, that's crazy." And it's just, it's not good, man. It's very, very childish. Look, I don't think Nature of Predators is bad, especially the first act, which, again, I talked about last year. I thought it was all right, but it's not very good. I feel like the foundation for a good book, or book series even, is here, but as it stands now, it's not good. More than bad, I would say it's disappointing. Like, this idea of, like, what if humans went into the universe and we were one of the only sapient species that ate meat and were predators, like, how would that differentiate us from other people? That's a really neat idea, and it deserves to be explored the same way that big ideas like that would be explored in, like, an old school science fiction novel. But as it stands, as we have here, though, that idea just isn't properly explored, and it just turns into mush by the end, you know, and that is very disappointing to me. And I keep coming back to this, but, like, the weekly release format and things like Patreon, where the authors are getting paid every month just to keep writing, that incentivizes them to stretch things out and make it even more bloated, and just keep writing just for the sake of writing. Like, there's a sequel to Nature of Predators, and I seriously don't understand why. I feel like the story really should have just been wrapped up by the end of this book, but again, the author is getting paid for it, so he is incentivized to keep going. You know, last year I read Vigor Mortis, which was worse than this, to be clear, and that was also originally a Royal Road story, and like, those had some really good ideas, and at the beginning of the story, it had some momentum, but again, the author got a Patreon going, so she was just incentivized to stretch it out and make it go on forever, and by the end, it was not even a story anymore, because an ending is part of what a story is. If you don't have an ending, it's not a story, it's just noise. I don't know, man. Nature of Predators, it has some cool ideas, it's a good foundation for a book, but as it stands now, it's not a great book. I know it has fans, but I don't really consider myself one of them. And the people who were annoyed at me for only reading the first act of the story, motherfucker, it is an entire book. Like, you can read this book. Like, if this is not its own book, which can be read and judged on its own, then the author should not have fucking published it as its own book, which can be read and judged on its own. Just throwing that out there. But to all the people who were annoyed at me for not reading the whole thing, I've now read the whole thing, and I like it less than I did when I just read this. So, I don't know. Do with that information what you will. That's about all. Be sure to like the video, comment on it, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, check out my Patreon or become a YouTube channel member, buy some of my merchandise. That sounds like fun. Do all that other stuff. Have a lovely day. I'll see you later. Goodbye. Hi, how's it going? The video's not over yet. You see all these names here? These are my patrons. My $10 and up patrons are Arthur D. Gonzalez Martin, Brother Santodes, Carolina Clay, Chibs Ahoy, Jace Spades, Lexi Delorme, Lord Tiebreaker, Michael and Katie Hake, Mr. AR013, Proscriptions of Dwojang, Rovi, Sykes XS, Slumbering Jellyfish, Observing Outer Space, Tesla Shark, Toa Michael, Vevictus, and Wesley. Thanks to all of them. Thanks to all these other people. Those are my $5 and up patrons. And, you know, thanks to everyone who just watches the video this far. You're all great. If you want to get your name put on here, as well as get access to early videos and exclusive videos and things of that nature, then consider donating to my Patreon or becoming a YouTube channel member. And if that's not something you feel like doing, then just dropping a like on the video, commenting on it, subscribing to my channel, making sure to watch everything I put out, that's all great too. Or just, you know, check out my merchandise store. Please, I need to eat. Anyways, that's all. Goodbye.